In this video, I'm going to be going over my top 6 pieces of advice to improve in Tekken 8 and start to win more. These tips can apply to new players struggling, or even old players who feel they've plateaued in terms of skill or rank. Whether you want to compete at EVO, or just beat your friends, this video will have something for you. Tekken is an insanely complex game, so there's no super easy way to start winning more. Hey, get out of here. But if you really want to improve and become a stronger Tekken player, I think these tips will help you out a lot. Some of these tips will be a bit more mentality based, while others will be more in-game focused. So I'll leave timestamps in the description so you guys can skip around if you want. Anyway, let's get to it. All right, so the first one's pretty simple, but it's actually something that a lot of people don't even think about, and that is where your focus should be while you're playing a match. So a lot of new players will get in this bad habit of looking at your own character primarily, and that is not what you want. It's a two-player game, and Tekken is the kind of game where it's way more important to know what your opponent's character and your opponent is doing rather than what your character is doing. So your focus needs to be on your opponent's character. That means when you're playing, you shouldn't catch yourself looking at your own character primarily. Your main focus should be watching your opponent rather than watching your own character. And it seems simple, right? Like, yeah, it's a fighting game. Watch what your opponent is doing. But a lot of people really miss this. Like, a lot of people miss this. And it's pretty simple to correct. We're gonna talk about Autopilot in a little bit, but like, knowing what your opponent is doing is so much more important than what you're doing. Like, if you're watching yourself and you're like, oh, I gotta hit this string and I gotta do this combo, like, you're just gonna develop bad habits and eventually you're gonna find yourself really, really struggling. Whereas, if you watch your opponent, like, really skilled players, if they know what their opponent is gonna do and their opponent's character is gonna do, they can beat you with just using, like, jabs and down forward one. Like, just very simple moves. You don't need combos, you don't need crazy strings. If you know, like, okay, when to duck, when they're gonna do this, when to sidestep, like, it's so much more important to know what your opponent is doing than what your own character is doing. Which is, a lot of new players will just get stuck on like, oh yeah, labbing combos, all this stuff, which I do not think should be a priority. But yeah, you need to watch your opponent's character, and obviously, like, in terms of character knowledge, watching your opponent in ranked battle isn't going to help you learn a ton of matchups. You'll get a little bit, but the main thing is bad habits, because everybody has bad habits, especially in ranked. People do the same strings and the same flowcharts over and over, and watching what your opponent is doing, like, they'll show you. There's no trick here. They'll show you exactly what they want, especially in lower ranks. Like, people are like, okay, I'm going to do 1, 2, 3 on Jin, and then I'm going to down 2 every single time. This is a flowchart so many Jin players use. But if you're just pressing buttons and watching yourself, you're not going to be ready for it. Like, you'll get hit by it once, and then you'll be like, okay, since I'm watching my opponent, I know that next time they're going to go for the 1, 2, 3, down 2. So I'm going to block low, and then I'm going to launch the next time they do that. So little things like that go a long way. And this is going to go directly into my second tip, and that is to avoid the autopilot. So these two kind of go hand in hand. Basically, autopilot is just playing whenever, and you're playing and you're not thinking, so just doing stuff. And this is a huge problem in fighting games. Even some tournament players say they struggle from this. It's really bad, and there's no easy way to avoid it, because I've actually experienced this a lot. I used to do tournaments in Super Smash Bros. And even though I was a pretty damn good player, sometimes I'd just be like, oh, my mind is not online. But to be successful in this game, you really want to be thinking at all times. So if you find yourself in a match and you're just, you know, pressing buttons, oh, la la la, down 2, you know, a hell sweep, whatever's going on, just mashing buttons, I want you to, like, try and think of a way. Now, I'll tell you what I do, because it's always beneficial to be thinking in this game, but sometimes it's hard while you're playing to, like, actually be, like, actively thinking in your head. A tip I use that really helps me is try narrating the game in your own head. So whatever's going on, like, if your opponent does this, be like, okay, he just hit me with like a high, low string. Okay, I'm gonna remember that for next time. Like, just like kind of like talk to yourself in your head as you're playing, and this will go an incredibly long way. Like, I don't know how to explain it to you guys, how important it is to be actively thinking as you're playing. Because again, this goes back to my first point. If you're just doing stuff, then you're not really going to be learning. You're not really going to be learning your opponent's habits. You're not really going to be learning how to win effectively. You need to know what your opponent is doing. And like I said earlier, there's two parts in this. There's knowing what your opponent's character does, which is pretty important, because I'll go back to the flowchart I mentioned earlier. If you know what Jin does, you're going to know, A, for the flowchart, 1, 2, 3, this is super interruptible. You can, if you have a 14 frame launcher, you can launch him for him doing this string. So that's like character knowledge, but there's also another part, which is opponent knowledge. So if you've been thinking and you've been watching your opponent, oh, he's going to do a low after that every time. So they go kind of hand in hand, and you want to have both, but building character knowledge is going to probably come with time. But in terms of like knowing what your opponent does, oh, he always uses the same grab. So if I'm watching my opponent and I'm thinking in my head, I'm going to be ready to do the 1 break. I'm going to be ready to do the 2 breaks. Like just little things like that. But I cannot stress how important it is to avoid the autopilot, because the autopilot is your worst enemy when it comes to Tekken. Like, and this is, again, this is going to come with time. It's super like tough as a beginner to be playing while you're thinking, because Tekken is a super complicated game. But like, that's why I think like new players starting with like just learning combos can be such a, it can set you back so far, because it's so bad to just constantly be looking at your own character and not be thinking. So that's gonna be my second tip, is try really hard to like think as you're playing. And maybe if you can't do it in the match, just try and think before. So like as you're loading up into a match, think, okay, this is a Kazuya. What do I know about Kazuya? Okay, he's gonna hell sweep me and he's gonna forward 3. He does a 50-50. Okay, I'm playing a Jin. He's gonna spam down 2 and forward 4. Like basic stuff like that. Or after a match, be like, okay, what went wrong there? What happened there? Why did I lose? Like, it's gonna come with time, but if you like start making an active effort to think while you're in your matches, you'll see such a massive improvement. Like, again, winning should not be the goal in ranked. The goal should be to improve and to learn stuff. And if you're thinking and you're watching your opponent, those two things, so avoiding autopilot and watching your opponent, you can't not improve. As long as you're like thinking intuitively, you're gonna always be improving, because you're always gonna be learning A, what the character does, and B, what the opponent does. So avoid autopilot. You really want to try to be thinking as much as possible. Now, the third tip I have is one I've talked about in a lot of my previous videos, so if you've seen my videos before, this is going to be nothing new to you, but you need to use replays. Replays are so incredibly important, especially in this game. Like, nobody knows how important replays are, but realistically, every time you lose a set on ranked mode, you should be going back in your replays, and before, watching replays could be kind of a drag, right? Because, oh, I have to sit through me losing, I don't want to watch this, but it's 1,000 times better in Tekken 8, because not only does it give you tips, so it'll say, oh, this is a hide in the duck, but you can actually take control of your character and just try shit out. So if something's been affecting you and you've been like getting, like let's say there's a string you don't know how to beat, you can literally press this button, enable controls for the left side character, and I'm now controlling myself in the replay. Like, this is such an invaluable tool. It's unreal how important this is, because in Tekken, strings are everything. Your opponent is still going to be spamming strings, especially in low ranks, and the beauty of Tekken, and I guess it's a beauty, it can also be a bad thing about the game, every single thing has a solution. So if your opponent's spamming a string, there's always a solution to it. You just have to take the agency in yourself to figure it out, and that's never been easier. Your opponent's spamming a move you don't know how to beat, go in training mode, enable the character, and just test shit out. Like, for me, the fun part about this game is just experimenting. Oh, I couldn't beat this. Let me try sidestepping. Let me try ducking the last hit. Let me try interrupting it with a jab. There's like an infinite number of things you can do. And if you have this mentality of like, every time I lose a set, I'm gonna try and learn something new. And ideally, you'd want to be learning while you're in the match. That's what I went on about earlier in terms of autopilot. But even if you're not thinking in the match, if you can go back and like test shit out and try and learn something, you'll be amazed how much you'll grow as a player. Like, even not doing it on purpose, you'll learn so much. It's so incredibly important. Like, I cannot overstate how important it is to be looking at your replays constantly and just learning new stuff all the time. This is such a great tool to improve. I'm thinking I might in the future do a video where I show you guys this full process, my full learning process in the game. I think that'd be pretty interesting, where I go into a ranked mode, I play a set, I win or I lose, whatever happens, I go into replay and I show you how I try and learn and how I try and use ranked mode as a tool to improve. I think that'd be a pretty cool idea for a video, so let me know if you'd want to see something like that. And really quick, if you guys are enjoying this video and want to see more videos like it, please consider subscribing to support me. Only about 9% of my viewers are subscribed, so it's a really, really big help. I super appreciate it. Anyways, let's get back to the tips. Now, the fourth tip I have is about how important it is to experiment with different characters. I know almost everyone in this game has a main, or they have like 1 or 2 characters that they pretty much exclusively stick to. And while that's not a huge problem, learning matchups if you want to rank up and you want to be really good in this game is super important. There's 32 characters in this game, a lot more manageable right now to learn a bunch of characters compared to Tekken 7 when there was like 50. But experiment with some new characters. Like, the reality is, trying out new characters can only be a good thing, because there's 2 scenarios, right? Let's say you love Jin and you only play Jin, but you're struggling with, I don't know, Reina. You pick Reina, and 2 things could happen. A, which is what's guaranteed, you're going to experiment with her, you're going to learn the character, and then the next time you fight Reyna, you're going to be more prepared. Very good thing to have, because Reyna is the most popular character in the game. So the next time you fight a Reyna, you're going to be a little bit more prepared, and then the next time you'll be a little bit more prepared. So you'll learn a matchup, which is super important, and the second possibility is that maybe you'll love the character. You never know. There's so many characters in this game, and they're all so unique. Like, you could find a secondary character, or you could find a new main. You could maybe say, oh yeah, I started with Jhin. I love Reyna's playstyle so much, and you could find a new character to play. Like, you could find a soul character for you, a character who you are meant to play, who just like fulfills every single thing you want in a character. You never know till you experiment, but that's just a secondary thing that could happen. The main thing is that experimenting with characters will expand your library of Tekken knowledge, which is so important. Like, I didn't know what the hell, like, Azucena did, but then I spent time learning her, I made a guide for her, and now I'm a lot more prepared to fight this character whenever I get into rank battle. So even if it's just like, oh, I'll try and learn one new character each week, or I'll try and like watch a guide, like, learning new characters is such an incredible way to improve in this game. Because do you think the shitters in rank battles who are just doing this, do you think these people are learning new characters? Do you think these people are watching their replays? Like, of course not. So if you just spend the time to do it, you're gonna have like such a huge advantage over it, like such an incredibly huge advantage. I can't recommend this enough. Just try experimenting with new characters, even some characters who you'd never play. Like Azucena, this character, I hate this character. I have no interest in ever playing this character, but through learning her, I've gotten 1,000 times better at the matchup. I almost never lose to Azucena players now, just because I know the tricks. And so in terms of learning characters, what I like to do personally is I just pick the character and I just like mess around with their move list. But if you Google guides, I have guides on about half the cast right now. You can go check that out. A lot of other people have like a lot of other guides. You can look up, like, there's some videos are like how to beat the matchup. A lot of that stuff can be really helpful as well. Just experiment around. There's so many options there's so much to learn in this game, and that's the beauty of it. So I cannot recommend enough, try new characters, because by playing one and never touching another one, you're limiting your growth as a player by a lot. Finally, the last piece of advice I'm going to give you guys is kind of half application based and half mental. So the application part is how important it is to block more. You should be blocking more than you're attacking if you actually want to learn. Now, this isn't going to help you win more, if I'm being honest. A lot of people will say, like pro players, oh, you need to block more, but they don't add in this part. If you block more, you're going to lose a lot. So blocking does not help you win, but what blocking will do is it'll help you learn. If you actually, and this kind of goes back to every single thing I've talked about in this video, if you're blocking more, it's going to be easier to focus on your opponent, which is back to my first tip I gave you. It's going to be easier to think, because if you're not just pressing buttons and if you're playing back, you're kind of forced to watch your opponent. And if you're doing that, since there's less going on, you're going to be thinking a lot more. So this will help with my first two tips a lot. But more importantly, I feel like you can just learn so much more when you just hold back. And again, you're going to lose. But we talked about it on my channel a lot, the importance of not caring whether you win or lose. It's super, super important to just focus on learning. Like, yes, you might lose ranks. You'll always get your rank back later. Your rank literally means nothing anyway. Like, right now, people can just disconnect 1,000 times and just get to whatever rank they want. So rank doesn't mean anything. You kind of have to learn to approach Tekken with no ego. And I think holding back is a great way to do this. You'll see me on my streams. If I'm fighting a character who I don't know how to fight, I'll literally just hold back on round start. I'll just start like backdashing back, and I'll just hold back and I'll wait. Okay, do they have like a full screen like attack move that's just like crazy mobility? Oh, do they have a string that's like low? Do they have like a gimmicky low string? Like, people will show you exactly what they want, and holding back is the key to like learning this stuff, because even if they're pressing strings, if you're just mashing buttons, you're never going to learn. So this kind of goes back to my first 2 points, like, a lot. And to get to, like, the more mental part, like I said, you can't approach Tekken with an ego. You just can't. You have to always be willing to learn new things when it comes to this game. It's super important. If you just want to win, then yeah, pick a gimmicky character and you'll just win. But if you're actually serious about improvement, you need to actually spend time inside and outside of the game to actually improve. Winning should never be your goal. Learning something new every game should be your goal. But as a little bonus, let's talk about improvement outside of the game. So I've talked about learning in game a lot on my channel. I've said a lot of times that you should try and learn one new thing every game. But for this final tip, I'm going to go even further than that. You should try and learn stuff even when you're not playing the game. I want you guys to be proactive with your learning experience. Take steps to learn stuff outside of the game as often as possible. And this can be really easy stuff as well. A lot of you guys like watching streamers. When you're watching a streamer, say if you're watching Memez, try and pay attention to what's actually happening on the screen. If he's streaming playing Rank Battle, pay attention to what his character does and what the opponent's character does. You'll see him punish strings very optimally because he's been playing the game for so long. Keep that in the back of your head. Maybe you'll see him low parry the final hit of a low string or duck the final hit of a high string. There's so much you can learn, and if you're spending time watching streamers anyway or stuff like this, like, always try and learn something. If you're watching YouTube, there's gameplay in the background, pay attention to what's going on. If you're struggling with a particular character, sometimes you'll have to go outside of the game. Each character in Tekken has their own dedicated discords. You can join these discords and ask people for games, ask for advice. Everyone in the Tekken community is really friendly, so if you just ask for help, a lot of people will give it to you. You can ask questions on people's streams. I always answer lots of questions whenever I go live, and most people are happy to help. I'm just saying, if you really want to get to the next level, sometimes you're gonna have to take it outside of the game. That's about all I've got for today. I really hope some of these tips were able to help you. And who knows, maybe in the future I'll make more videos like this going over 5 more tips or whatever. Let me know in the comments what you guys have been struggling with in this game, and I'll try and answer in the comments, and maybe if there's enough interest, I'll make a new video covering your questions. Anyway, if you enjoyed, make sure to like the video, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching.